Yeah. Necessary is it for you to listen to me?
This mic is necessary. You only have to hold that. But
Like that?
yes,
All right. Is that good? Okay.
5 seconds.
This is really strange. Okay. So good to start? No. Okay. All right. So good afternoon, everybody. I don't understand why I need a mic, but I'll speak to you as if we are in the same room, so I don't have to shout. My name is Fabian Sepulveda. I will introduce myself in a little bit, but I first want to set some expectations for you guys in this workshop, in our upcoming 10 sessions. First of all, I want you to think that you are that person taking a dive, and that this workshop and set of workshops is the dive. So feel the rush, feel the energy, because hopefully what we will give you are tools, practices, and some skills that will allow you to take on huge challenges like this. So it feels fun, it feels great, but you will be much better prepared at the end of this journey. Ultimately, today and throughout the workshop, what we want to do is to introduce you to tools and practices and knowledge to become a better angel investor. As you know, these next 10 sessions are intended for you to be the best angel investor you can be. If you have an angel investment, or if you're a startup yourself, the practices and the tools that we will go through will help you in both scenarios. Now, I was asked to speak slower than normal, so it's not that I'm retarded or anything. So I'm just going a little bit slow for the translation, okay? So, this is my team. A little bit about us is we are 4 Americans living in Finland with a Finnish-based venture capital fund. We have myself, I'll introduce myself in a second. We have Will Cardwell, who has been a partner with Imagoro since the beginning, knows Tanya for many years. He's our managing partner. Both of us live in Finland. We're based in Finland. Todd is based in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the US. He's our health expert, but he spends about 45 nights a year in Finland alone just to make investments and help us with the fund. And this is Bruce Orrick. He was here last year. He's the former US ambassador to Finland. And he's also from the Orrick family business in the US. You might be familiar with the Orrick vacuum cleaners, which is a big, big business in the US. And he's 3rd generation family business. But he was the US ambassador to Finland for 6 years. And we are the team that's managing our micro venture capital fund. We are early stage investors in health, education, and environment. We are also angel investors outside the fund. Will has a portfolio of approximately 6 startups. I have a portfolio of 4 startups. Todd has many, many startups, and so does Bruce. So we are both, all 4 of us are angel investors and venture capital investors. A little bit about myself. I'm an American living in Finland, and on behalf of my president, on behalf of my country, I apologize for my president. It's not my fault. I voted for her. It's hard to be American these days. outside the US. But anyway, I live in Finland because my wife is Finnish, and we moved there 11 years ago. And my entire 11 years there have been around startups. I have been an entrepreneur myself. I failed a startup beautifully. And after failing my first startup, I decided that I was better at supporting entrepreneurs than becoming one myself. So I went on to start the angel investment, the activities that I'm doing, and also the venture capital fund with my partners. But before that, I worked very closely, and I still do work very closely with the Finnish ecosystem of startups. So I was responsible for bringing or working with the team that brought the Stanford Technologies Ventures program to the local university in Finland called Aalto University. So I was very privileged to work with Stanford University for about 3 years. I co-taught with Stanford professors. If you have heard of Steve Blank, I trained with Steve Blank to become a lean startup facilitator. I trained with Steve twice. So all of the practices that we are going to talk about today and all of the practices that we teach, we've actually done ourselves, and we've also trained on them from Stanford University and top gurus. Before that, I come from industry. I was an investment banker in London. I also worked in management consulting for a number of years, and I was also an engineer working in the telecom. So I come from industry into this world. But that's a little bit about me. I want to give you a glimpse of what the whole 10 weeks are going to be about. But very quickly after that, jump into what today's workshop is going to be. Okay. So, first of all, what we are aiming to do is to prepare you to be an angel investor. If you're already one, that's great, that's fine. But what we're going to give you is state-of-the-art tools and practices that will help you add value, not just money, but add value to the startups that you are investing in. If you're a startup founder, even better, because then you will be able to use these tools. And the angel and the founder will have a common language to speak, common practices, common tools to help the company grow. The most important thing is that in order for you to be an angel investor, you really need to empathize with your founders. It's not just about giving them money and giving them orders. It doesn't work that way. You really have to open doors, help them grow the company, get them customers, get them channels, get them additional investment. So it's not just about giving money, because after you give money, you're on the same boat as they are. Their win is your win. Once you understand their perspective and what language the entrepreneurs speak, then you're ready to be able to provide that support and added value to them. So the course is divided into 8 sessions, about 1.5 hours each. There's going to be 6 webinars. You will have some work in between the sessions, outside on your own, some homework. Okay, there'll be light readings. All of the materials will be distributed electronically. I think Nina is responsible for doing all of that. You will have live sessions weekly, online, and my partner Will's going to be running those. Okay, and you're going to go all the way through until July with these sessions. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about during these 8 sessions is, number 1, and this is today, we're going to understand lean startup practices. This is traditionally what the startups actually do. Whether they know it or not, this is what they're known for. So we're going to get to talk the same language and use the tools and practices to actually support the growth and development of our startups. We do this very actively with our angel portfolio as well as with our venture capital portfolio. Okay. Next are the other sessions where you're going to talk about specifically on angel investment, best practices, sources of financing, strategic versus financial types of investments, additional evaluations of how to look at portfolio companies, how to bring them on, and potential exits. I have a keynote tomorrow that I'm going to be talking about, just introducing the exit topic. Next, we're going to talk about how do you manage the investment, again, not only on giving the money, but using some of these tools to go there. Alignment of what is achievable. So how do you measure development? How do you measure progress? Yesterday I was interviewed by one of your media companies, and they asked me, so what are the key performance indicators that you give your portfolio companies? And it's very difficult to give one blanket answer because it just depends. If we have a company in health, it's very different than, say, in education. And within health, is it digital health? Is it life sciences? Is it pharma? Is it patient care? They have very, very different metrics. So you have to jointly develop those with the startups if you want to measure true progress. It's not only about more sales, more customers. Yes, that's good, but that's not enough to measure true progress, okay? And the last one is, how do you manage and assess the operational development of the companies? But today, we're just going to focus on this one, okay? Now, what today is about, very quickly, is we're going to just very briefly introduce the angel concept, okay? Then we're going to get right into the lean startup practices. And most importantly, and this is what I want you to walk away with today, is how do you get the startup founders to search for evidence-based development? How do you, it's not just their word, yeah, we're doing great, but rather, do you have evidence from the customers, from users, from pilots, from intermediaries? How do you get business model validation? That's what we're talking about here. And these are going to be the end results. You're going to understand each other, what you're talking about. You understand ways to track and help support the development and be empowered to be in that position. Today's focus is going to be on business models. Now, I'll mention one thing right away. Business models tends to get confused very often with the revenue model. The revenue model is a part of the business model, but not all of it, as you will see later today. What we're talking about here with the business model is everything. It's customer segments, it's value propositions, channels, relationships, revenue model, cost structure, so on and so forth. It's the holistic view at the whole operation. So when we're talking about business models and finding evidence that the business model is actually working, we are not only talking about making money, but the whole operation. Okay, and that's what we're going to get together aligned between the investors and the startups. Okay, so let's get right into it. Brief introduction to angels. So that is Ron Conway. He's actually not an angel. He's considered a super angel. And the reason why he's considered a super angel is because they can invest. So traditionally, an angel can invest maybe tens of thousands and stretch it to maybe 100,000, 200,000. Super angels can invest up to millions on their own money. So they can put down $1 million, $2 million, $3 million just on their own money. So Ron Conway is a super angel. He invested in companies like Google, you might have heard of it, Google, Facebook, PayPal, all the big names. Ron's been there since the beginning. So it's very easy. Please. In a very early stage, yes. So that's how exactly how he got so rich. And he became a super angel. What makes Ron very special is that he's extremely well connected. So he picks up the phone and he can call somebody and say, I've got this great new startup. Would you be interested in buying it? Or something like, or investing in it. So he's extremely well connected. But let's take a look back as to why angels get involved. First of all, and it's not just about having fun, but angels want to do this. They want to be a part of something that is created from nothing. They want to be a part of that journey. And they want to have fun in the process, but they won't get involved in it unless they see some potential of returns on their money. Now, we all know the statistics, right? The statistics do not favor startups. something like 6 or 7 out of 10 startups fail outright, and the other 3 or 4 that survive need to make up for all the other losses. So we're talking about the whole portfolio of investments has to overall provide some sort of potential return. Well, angels not only invest where they need money or where startups need money, but rather where they can add value. What does that mean? And what do they mean by adding values? Can I get you a customer? Can I get you a channel deal? Can I get you a distributor? Can I hook you up with some other investors? That's true value added. And they only do that if they feel some sort of emotional connection with the startup, whether it's the team or the opportunity, or I just really like this. So I have an investment in a food company. And I'm a foodie, I love food, and I've even gone on tourism for food, just, to try different cuisines. But I, as an angel, invested in a company that is on food, and they make the food and deliver the food and own the entire process in between. So they're horizontally integrated. They own everything, and the food is fantastic. They hire the best chefs in Helsinki because they tell them, would you rather work on Friday evenings and Saturday evenings serving hungry customers in the nights, or would you like to work 9 to 5 with no customers and you just make the same kind of food, but we just put it in a box and take it to somebody's home? So obviously they get the best chefs available because the chefs also want to have a family and their kids and so on. And so I invested in that company because I feel like very close to it. I feel like I can add value by getting all these neighborhood mothers with busy, hobbies for their kids to buy all this food. So I feel like I can contribute something. I invested in a cookie company because I love handmade cookies. So again, it's somewhere where I've also invested in other companies, software companies and so on. But I'm making the point here that I have an attachment to these companies where I think I can contribute beyond just money. Okay. Now, if you're just looking for money from angels, then that's that's dumb money. That's stupid money. That's easy money to find, relatively speaking. What you want is smart money. Is someone that can bring money and networks and introductions and channels that can actually help you. That's what you want to do. So this is basically a summary of what I'm talking about. The further development you have in your startups, when you start, you have usually your own money, maybe some friends' money, some family money, and eventually you get to a point where you need to go outside and get a little more money from angels. If you keep going, then you go to venture capital and so on and so forth, right? The level of activity in investors decreases as you go up. It shouldn't be that case, but it normally does. So friends and family probably don't get involved very actively. They just give you money because they believe in you. Angels want to be very active, and that's the type of angel that you want to have. You don't want an inactive angel. If you take money from an angel that doesn't want to be there, that could be agreed, and that's okay. But you still need other angels to make up for that. They still need to give you some sort of added value. Okay. But this is where they really help you, is by doing a constant, recurring way of assessing the development of your company. Okay. If you, as an angel, don't do this actively, it's like putting money in a box and seeing what happens to it later. So you have to do this comprehensively, recurringly, and systematically, is help the company grow and help them evaluate. And most importantly, hold them accountable for results. Not so much about the process, because entrepreneurs are very difficult to manage. So don't pay too much, don't be so strict on the process, but rather hold them accountable for outcomes. And this is where you can actually add a lot of value as well. So that was a little bit of an introduction to the angel side, okay? I want to get to this point as quickly as possible, especially as we started a bit late, okay? So, I'm going to start with what I consider to be the most important part of an investment. Whether you're an angel or a venture capitalist, the startup team is the most important element in any investment. Why? Because would you rather invest in an A team with a B idea or invest in a B team with an A idea? So raise your hand if you would do the first. Who would do the first? Raise your hand. Okay. Who would do the second one?
What is the difference?
So would you rather invest in a first team, like a premier team with a so-so idea? Or would you rather invest in a so-so team with the best idea? So I'm with the first group. I would invest in one. So let me elaborate on that. Why? Because an A team, first of all ideas change. They will always change. I have never met an entrepreneur who had an idea and took that idea and successfully, just like it was, took it to market. It always changed. So you can expect the idea to change. Now what you want is the right team to change it in the right direction. Because unless you have the cure for cancer, and that's not going to change, right? Well, maybe not. But if you have something like that, the idea is very likely to change. And so you want the best team. So that's the most important part of your investment, is who you're giving your money to, and do they have the ability to turn a B idea into an A idea. That's what you want to look at. A little part here is, can you really understand entrepreneurs? Maybe, maybe not. You know, some entrepreneurs are crazy. Some are very difficult to understand. You know, great speakers, great marketers. Some guys live on the background. They want a lot of attention. But it's very difficult to manage a real entrepreneur. And I'm not suggesting that you should or shouldn't. I'm just saying, do we really need to understand them? Really? Can you understand entrepreneurs? Well, rather than that, I think that what we can focus on is, can they deliver? That's the real question. It's not whether do I understand them or not, is can they deliver? Do I trust them to be able to adapt to the changes and iterate as necessary? Now, this is what, to me, you're familiar with this, the All Blacks from New Zealand. This is a rugby team, and they always do this dance called the haka. And now they're doing the haka. So they look a bit crazy and scary, and that could be what you feel like as an investor with a team that's very sort of way out there, right? But what I want to show you now is one of the main reasons why you should put your money into a team before the idea. Of course, the idea is also important, but the team is more important, in my view. And just to be fair, there are investors who see it the other way around. They see the product is an interpretation of the team's capabilities. That could be argued, but my view is, so what? The product is going to change anyway. So they could have the most beautiful, effective, technical product today, but if they can't sell it, it doesn't matter. So to me, it's about the team. So I'm going to play you a video now of why I think the importance of teams. And the video I'm going to play is from the founder of Shopkick. He's actually an American. Well, he's based in the US. He's based in San Francisco. And he has made an app that allows shops at malls to put offers, location-based offers, so that if you're walking around the store in the mall, you get an offer, and you go into the store and you buy. And they've done more than $5 billion in transactions. So this is a very, very successful company. And so what I'm going to show you is this is a guy who has made it, did a startup, and he's talking about teams. Oops. Okay. No? The left one, thank you.
The other thing that, that I think is interesting is when you start a company is the team. So that's one of the things that I'm very passionate.
Can we raise the volume of the... Can you hear it?
God.
Oh, okay.
About. If I could only do one thing, you might have figured out by now that I'm passionate about mobile. Despite that, I'm actually even more passionate about building awesome teams. So if I had to choose one thing only, I would choose that. Why? Because awesome teams are the secret ingredient of every success. It doesn't matter whether your idea was great if you don't have an awesome team to execute on it. If you have a mediocre idea and an awesome team, you have a chance to find a good idea later. If you have an awesome idea with a bad team, you're done. And apart from that, I simply love growing great teams because it's so awesome when you see the dynamics kick in and people are building things together. It's just very rewarding. So what makes an awesome team? And I wanted to share that philosophy with you. I don't know if it will make sense to everybody, but it's what I've lived by and what has worked for me, and so I wanted to share that. I've never shared that outside of my own company. So I think an awesome team is made up by 4 things. The first one is individual brilliance. And when I say individual brilliance, I'm talking about 10x very good. I'm talking about outliers. I'm sure there are a few of you in the room. Individual brilliance is very rare. So it means you're just amazing at what you do. And by the way, this is not limited to intellectual skills and so on. I don't know if you've ever been to a coffee shop where a barista who made your coffee was just amazing. And they were just so much better and nicer than anyone you've met before. Have you had that experience before? Or you flew an airline and a flight attendant was just unbelievably great. Or somebody at a store helped you and they were just so much better than anybody else. Or you had a teacher and they just stuck out of the mass and they were just so much better than all the others. Do you know that feeling? Outliers, individual brilliance. Now, here's the problem. If you take individually brilliant people and you put them in a room, they're likely going to kill each other. So what do you do to solve that problem? That's where the second circle comes in. First one is individual brilliance. The second one is a set of shared values that are very unflexible. Very unflexible. So, for example, integrity, high aspirations, change the world attitude, can-do attitude, work hard, play hard. Those are values that all the people that are these individually brilliant people need to adhere and agree to. And only if everyone agrees to change these values, then we'll change them. Otherwise, we're not. And this person needs to either adapt or leave. In other words, not flexible at all. So now, the third one. The third one is, outside of these individual, very unflexible values, extreme diversity. So in other words, you have people who are very different. At my company right now, at Shopkick, we have people who come from the fashion world. They worked at Vogue before. And you have hardcore developers who are absolutely outstanding in their field, some of the best engineers you will have ever met yourself. And you have people in business development who are unbelievably good at striking deals, right? They're very different people. They look different too, as you can imagine. One worked at the Vogue, the other one didn't. So in other words, very different. But outside of these values, they are completely diverse. But inside, they're very aligned. And because they're so aligned on what matters, it works. And then the magic kicks in. And then the fourth one comes into effect, because now if you don't have the fourth one, then people might just go crazy at awesome things, but they all don't help the company. So you need a mission and a vision that people believe in. And if they all believe in the same vision, it's like a wind blowing into one direction. And then it gets really powerful.
Okay, so a little bit about qualification of that. I am American, and the video that I showed you is very American. So don't disregard or dismiss.
What is the problem of an entrepreneur?
What's happening here? 1 second. Sorry.
The number one problem. What is always the problem when you start a company? Actually, that comes later. What's
This one?
What is it?
An idea, a good idea.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Now how do I put this back to full screen? Shift F5. No? Shift F5. No. Thank you. Sorry. Is it one of those? No. What about F12? See, I usually no.
А, это Фоксит еще, да? Отлично. Control-H, ну, полный экран, конечно.
It's got to be like a full screen.
Full screen, yes. Control-H and Adobe. This is not Adobe. So the normal Control-L or key that's
Okay. No, they just leave it. It's okay. I think as long as I can flip, that's okay.
Ah, right. F11 we will close.
F11. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. So,
5 seconds.
yeah. Okay. Okay to continue? Okay. Very good. So, I understand that the video is, it might seem like very American, exaggerated, Hollywood style. But the points that he makes are very important anywhere in the world. Why? Because you're going to be competing against teams from other parts of the world who believe in that. And so the values that they were talking about, the ability of them to have a passion, a change the world attitude, the best possible team. Other teams that you will be competing with are going to have that. And they might be competing with you for investment, for customers, etc., etc. So it's important for you to know at least that those are being adopted by other teams who might get investment. You take a team that has a really good idea, but no passion, no drive, and they have exactly the same idea with a team that can really just blow the top off that, they are the ones that are going to get the investment and the customers and so on. It's that important, okay? I can't stress enough how the team that you're investing in is the most important part of the investment. It's very up. Now, once you have a good team, say, okay, I'm happy with the team, then don't forget the opportunity. That's also important. Okay? The opportunity itself could be such that they think like this. Entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't. In all seriousness, that happens maybe less than 5% of the time, if that. Let's give you a more realistic view of what the opportunity should look like. What is the opportunity? What is entrepreneurship? What are these entrepreneurs going for? Is that golden egg where it doesn't matter whether I have the resources today or not, I'm going after it. I'll find a way, but I'm going to get them. That's what we're talking about here. Go-to attitude. Doesn't matter if I don't have the resources, I'll find them, I'll borrow, I'll get them from somewhere. That's the attitude that you want. Now, what is an opportunity? When you're evaluating as an investor, you're evaluating the idea, the opportunity. What differentiates it from just being an opportunity, or let's say an idea, and a business opportunity, a real business opportunity? It's here. An opportunity, it's something that you can build around a product or a service, a company that creates value. Not just for you, but for your customers, stakeholders, and you. But notice that it creates value. It's an entire business model around a product or a service. It's not just the product, it's not just the service, but it's a business model that creates value for your stakeholders. There's a big difference here, and I will very strongly stress that lean startups and your investment is not, you're not investing in a product, otherwise you would buy the product. You're investing in a scalable business model. And the way to differentiate that is not by purely focusing on products and services alone, but rather business models. Okay? Now, where do you find opportunities? Universities, technology shifts, and so on. But the most important thing that you need to remember is what differentiates just a hobby or an idea from a real business, scalable opportunity are these 5 characteristics. Most importantly, does it solve a problem or satisfy a need? Without that, it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do a business if it doesn't solve a problem or satisfy a need. It has to do that. Because otherwise, it's a hobby. You're selling to your neighbors, to your family, to your friends. Not going to scale. The next thing is, does somebody want this? Okay, so you solve a problem for me, so I don't like black socks. So can you solve that problem for me? Sure, I'll give you white socks. How big of a problem is that for me? I can wear black socks if I don't have money. Not a big deal. If somebody is willing to pay money to solve that problem or satisfy that need, then the opportunity is good. Because it's not just enough that you solve a problem or satisfy a need. It needs to be wanted, and wanted badly. Like, you want the best possible customer that your startup can have is the one that says, wow, give me this yesterday, not tomorrow. I want it like now. Can you give me the prototype or a first version of it? Because I have such a big problem that I cannot fix today, that even with a prototype that you give me, I can fix this and improve it. Please, I'll be your pilot customer. That demonstrates that. Actionable, it has to be something that you can do something about. Unless you're Richard Branson, if your startup is space tourism, that's not very actionable, right? Unless you have a rocket, okay? But it has to be something that you can do something about in the near future, that you can actually control. Unique, you don't necessarily have to be unique. That's arguable. We can debate that. What you do have to be is differentiated. How can you differentiate from competitors? What is the secret sauce that you bring to the table? How do you create value differently? And I absolutely hate it when a startup says, we have no competitors. Everyone has competitors. If you look at substitutes, substitutes are competitors. They're just not an organization competing with you. They are different ways that your customer can solve the problem today. And you're competing against that. Let me give you an example, easy example. If you ever given a class, you as a teacher, you are competing for the attention of your students. Because there's the phones, there's other friends, there's the laptops, there's all that, and you're competing for attention. So it's up to the teacher to keep the attention span of your participants. It's not like another teacher is going to come in here and compete with me for your attention. That would be a true competitor, right? That's what I'm talking about here. So you have to be differentiated. Okay? And the next thing is, at some point, you have to be able to turn a profit if you're going to be sustainable. Now, this is also debatable. There's been a lot of companies who have sold out and been acquired without being profitable. You know Skype? Skype existed 9 years independently. Guess how many quarters Skype was profitable? Take a guess. 1 quarter of 9 years. So out of 36 quarters, only 1 quarter Skype made a profit. And he got acquired by Microsoft. So that's also debatable. But if you want to be a standalone company, you eventually have to turn a profit. 5 qualities for a good business opportunity. This is a key question. As the entrepreneur and the investor, is your investment worth the time, money, and energy that you're going to put into this? If you're investing in hydraulic lifting cranes, and you think that's the most boring thing in the universe, don't invest in it. It's not worth your money and time and energy if you don't like it. If, for example, then you like gaming, and you know gaming really well, and you can maybe open some doors and you enjoy it, invest in gaming. So basically, this is a question that you really have to ask yourself before you jump into a relationship as an investor, because it is a relationship. It's just like being married almost. And in fact, it sometimes can be worse than marriage. But I won't go there. Okay. All right. The next thing that you want to evaluate around the opportunity is the opportunity big enough that we can be a profitable and scalable company? Is the size of the pie getting bigger? As an investor, this is very important to you because you want to understand that the opportunity is big and growing. That's the ideal scenario. So regardless of what the startup entrepreneur tells you, as an investor, you have to do your own research. This is why you see a lot of angel investors specializing in specific sectors. because the more they find out about those sectors, the less research they need to do because they know the sector well. But when you're starting out as an investor, the responsibility falls on you to understand just how attractive that market is. So for example, if I came to you and I said, "Hi, Mr. or Mrs. Investor, I have toilet paper 2.0. Would you invest?" Is the market big? Yeah, it's pretty big. Is it growing? I don't know. It's actually maybe shrinking, right? You go to Japan, people don't use toilet paper, they use washing. You understand my point, right? So you gotta understand how big the market is. But if I came to you and I said, "Hi, Mr. or Mrs. Investor, I have a health solution using artificial intelligence that will automate bookings for hospitals." Sounds kind of interesting, right? Sounds like something that you might want to hear more about, right? And then you could find out how big that market could be. You can do it two ways. I always recommend investors or anybody to assess their market from top down and bottom up. The likelihood of those two being the same is almost zero. They never are the same, but you want to see if they're in the same order of magnitude, if they're about the same. So what you want to understand is, okay, if I look at everyone who is in the space of, say, education, okay, all edtech companies, and then I say, well, I'm in edtech that focuses on gamifying tests. That's not all of the edtech market, but it's a specific segment of the edtech market. How many others are out there offering solutions that gamify tests? And how many of those customers can I get in the next year and a half to 2 years? That's top down. Bottom up means I have an app that I'm going to sell at €1 or $1 per student per month. So $12 a year per student. If I sell it to 1,000 schools a month, then I'm going to make, with an average of 100 students per class, you get my point. You start going bottom up. And then you have to triangulate the two to see if they're about the same. If the top down says that you have a $10 billion market, and this one says it's 100 million, then there's something wrong, okay? It's basically for triangulation. Now, that's me after dinner. No, just kidding. What is your competitive advantage? What is it that you do differently? By definition, the startup that you're investing in needs to be doing something special. It's not just that you're bringing McDonald's to a new corner of the city. That cannot be the only innovation, just putting something new there. It's not enough. What is it that you do differently? I'm going to show you an example a little bit later. Everybody knows Uber. Uber is not a taxi company. They're a platform that connects cars and passengers, right? So they did something very different with something that existed for a long time. So what is your competitive advantage? Who do you think would win this match? He's fast, he's small, he can go between his legs, but this guy is big and slow and strong, right? It just depends on what you're trying to do. If you're going to fight sumo, maybe he will win. But if the competition is to run away, maybe he will win. You don't know. The first rule of a game is to know that you are in a game. Okay? So don't assume that this is sumo. In the same thing here, what is your competitive advantage? Don't assume the game is the way it has always been. Can you change the game? That's what Uber did. That's what Airbnb did. That's what a lot of other companies have done. They changed the business model. Same product, same service, different business model. What is your secret sauce? And this is where you're evaluating the opportunity. When your startup or your investments are talking to you, they're trying to articulate the opportunity. Now what happens 90% of the time is they talk about a product. My product does this and its APIs and all these kind of TDKs and all kinds of technical talk. Tell me what it does for your customer. In fact, one of the slides that I'm going to show you, stop talking about your product, start talking about your customer. This is one way that you can talk about the value you create for your customers as a startup entrepreneur. Okay? Now, what you got to look at is your secret sauce, your competitive advantage, your differentiation creates value. Now, what value does that create and how is it different? It's all about the creation of value. Is it because you give an opportunity to your customers to get new revenues, new customers? Is it because the customer doesn't want to lose the opportunity? Is it more convenient? Is it something that gives them peace of mind? I feel a sense of security. Is it prestige, like owning a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz instead of a Volkswagen or Mazda? Okay? Is it emotional satisfaction? Is it ego satisfaction? What value do you create for your customers? And as an investor, this is the pinnacle, the number one thing that you want to evaluate is, are you creating value for customers? How quickly and how much traction are you getting with customers? Okay? That leads me very nicely to the next thing. How do we measure? How do we know if our companies are creating value? Sales? Okay, sales. But what if you have like a Twitter? Twitter didn't make any money or sales for a long time, but they had massive amounts of customers, right? Instagram was another one. So again, how do you know what value you are creating? It's not only monetary. It could be something else. So let's evaluate that. So this is the slide I promised you. Stop talking about your product and start talking about your customer. So rather than focusing on what your product does, talk about what your product does for your customer. My product reduces costs, reduces time, it gives flexibility, it's an unparalleled experience. What does it do for your customer? Okay? You've never heard Facebook talk like, we use customer data and sell it to third parties. No, that's not what Facebook says to you, right? What they tell you is that they give you a platform for you to share pictures when they first came out, to share pictures with family and friends, right? So what is it? They don't tell you, give us your data so we can sell it and get rich. So stop talking about your product, start talking about your customer. I'm going to play you a video. And let me just take a show of hands. Has anybody seen The Wolf of Wall Street, the movie? Okay, so this is a scene where he's asking people, sell me this pen. And I want you to pay attention to what everyone talks about. Okay, so let me play this video. Actually, I'm going to show you. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to share with you two videos. The first one is the one I just mentioned. And the second one is, how do you really sell someone a pen? By stopping, you stop talking about product and you start talking about your customer. So I'll give you both sides of the equation on that.
Hi gang, welcome to Free Trick Friday.
Wrong one, let's see.
That's Thank you.
I put them on. They are, right?
Sell me this pen.
It's a amazing pen. For professionals.
Sell me this pen.
It's a nice pen. You can use the pen to write down thoughts from your life so you can remember.
Sell me this pen.
Well, this pen works, and I personally
I'm glad the pen works. Anyway, you get the idea, right? That the entire conversation was about the pen. This pen works. Okay, good that it works, otherwise you're not going to sell it to me. This pen is marvelous, or whatever. They were just talking about the product. So I'm going to show you another video where they ask, the person is addressing the same question from the customer's perspective with something so simple as a pen. And 1:06. Yeah, no, I got it. It's just that there's a part of it that I want to show you, in all of it. Okay, so he's addressing the same question. Sell me this pen.
Mr. CEO, Mr. Salesperson, what do you use a pen for in your everyday dealings? What do you do with a pen? Well, I write notes to my secretary. I jot down some things, some thoughts that I have to do, and I sign sales contracts. Sales contracts, that's probably the most important thing in your job. When's the last time you signed a new client to a sales contract? This morning, in fact. Exactly, okay. What pen did you use? Oh, I don't know, it's a pen on my desk. The most important thing that you do in your workday, and you can't even tell me what kind of a pen you use to do it. Now this pen, if you had this pen on your desk and you only used it to close contracts, if the only thing you used this pen for was when you had a new client sign on the dotted line for your sales, every time you looked at this pen, every time you saw it on your desk in its little stand, you'd think to yourself, there's a sale I've got to make. And when you picked it up, you would have a sense of accomplishment knowing that you'd made your vital sale. This pen, I'm going to tell you the truth. Your competitor, Mr. Jones, I just shipped 5 boxes of these pens to him for his sales team. All I've got is this one left. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it to you. Use it for a week. If you don't like it, if it doesn't do everything, if it doesn't give you that inspiration, I will come personally back to your office and I'll take it back from you with no charge whatsoever. What do you say?
So, a little bit of the American hustle there. But the point that I wanted to make is clear, and that is, here we go. And the point is, okay, a pen is a very mundane object, okay? Pencil, piece of paper, toilet paper, very, very everyday kind of uses, right? But the other guy, not this video, but the other video, completely forgot about, de-emphasized the pen and emphasized what the gain was going to be on the use of that pen. You are going to feel a sense of accomplishment with this pen. You will be reminded that there's a sale I've got to close. And the sense of urgency, your competitor just bought 5 boxes. That's a little bit of the American hustle, okay? But still, the point is the pen was secondary to the experience of the customer. So it's very difficult to make something so mundane valuable like a pen. Imagine your startups. they do something much more valuable. So it should be easier to describe the value they gain from using whatever solution your startups are providing. So that's why I emphasize so strongly that it's about your customer and not your product. And now we can see that. Let me show you a couple of examples from the US that are just absolutely horrible. Maxwell House is one of the most commonly known coffee brands in the US. Do they have it here? I don't think, no. They do, they have it. Wow, okay, I didn't know that. This is one of the huge coffee brand. They decided that they were going to have ready-made coffee in these packages that were made from the same material as the vacuum-packed ground coffee, which was made of aluminum. And they just decided to put a cap on it. And they said, oh, a convenient new way to enjoy the wonderful taste of... They gave it a spin. The coffee could not be microwaved because it was aluminum, right? You can't put that in the microwave. So you still had to put it in a cup. And if I'm going to do that, I might as well just take coffee and put it in a brewing machine. So where was the value created? Not convenient, right? But you could see what was happening in the background. It was all about the product. How can we reuse our existing value chain so that we don't have to create new containers? We just piggyback on what we have that's existing, but just give it a spin. Didn't work. How many of you think of Colgate as something to eat? Awful. They came out with kitchen meals. Microwave kitchen meals. And this is what they said. We are in the business of filling your mouth with things. That was their new motto. Tell me, what value is there? I'm going to fill your mouth with things. Okay, thank you. And you know, they were inside the organization. They were talking about what is the share of mouth population. Okay? Where's the value in this? Again, value. Big brand. Couldn't do it. They were off the shelves in less than 6 months. They couldn't do it. No value. So that's why I'm saying value creation is the most important element that you are driving your team towards. And this is how you constantly check that. Ask your entrepreneurs, do you solve a problem? Do you satisfy a need? Have them check with their customers. Do they solve a problem? Do you satisfy a need? If you've been to pitch contests before, one of the favorite questions of investors in the audience to ask is, what problem do you solve? Even if they said it during the presentation, some investors, myself included, I like to ask that question because I want to hear a well-articulated answer as to how you solve that problem. What problem is it that you're tackling? And if they talk about the product, not the right team. I want them to explain what they do in terms of how they make the customer experience better. I'm going to give a test to you here. So this is an activity for you guys to work on. And work in pairs, and maybe you three can work together 1 or 2 minutes. The question is this. Look at this guy and tell me what he needs. Come up with as many answers as possible. Let's take 1 to 2 minutes to do that. Just write them down. Any ideas that you have. What does this person need? 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, we ready? Let's just take a quick break from that. So let's please share some of yours with me. What were some of the ideas? Say again.
We can start?
Yes.
Okay. A pillow.
A pillow. Okay, what else? Notebook. Okay. What else?
Needs to sleep.
Sleep. Relax. Nap.
Water.
This doesn't work. My earpiece stopped working. I can't hear what you're saying. Sorry. Water. Okay.
Maybe he needs a tutor.
A tutor. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. What else?
Maybe he needs to delegate his some troubles and problems.
Some help. Some support. Yes. Let me give you some answers. A psychologist. Conditioning, yes. Exercise. Let me give you some answers that other people, some food. Let me give you some other answers that I have heard before. So, spectacles, new glasses, yes. So, a pillow, a bed, blanket, entertainment, a girlfriend, maybe, a doctor, turn off the lights. New haircut, yes, I like that. So you get the idea here. And the main idea is, imagine if for every solution that you said of what this person needs is just based on the picture, you were to start a new company. New company for a pillow, a new company for a psychologist, a new company for a bed, a new company for support, a new company for a book. Imagine if every one of those was a new startup just based on this picture. And you understand there's multiple ways to create value for this person, but how do you know which one he really needs and he really wants? So the point that I'm driving to is you have to get to know your customer intimately and ask again and again and again and validate the creation of value. Because he'll tell you, I actually need some pills to keep me awake. And none of us said that. And maybe that's what he's ready to buy. That's his real problem. That's his real need. And that's the whole point that I'm driving at. Value creation cannot be assessed only based on our perceptions, but rather, don't use that. Go out to customers, go out to the field and validate it from the real customer population. That's what we're driving at. Okay? So notice that everything, just about everything we said was 80% product, 20% service. If you only think about the creation of value as a product or as a service, but not an outcome, then you're only one innovation away from being completely wiped out. Because when the new product comes out, and you don't know, no longer a new type of pillow comes out, you don't need a pillow anymore. Okay? But what this person might really need is rest. What is the outcome that he needs? Is rest, energy, a sense of happiness maybe, but the venue of getting there is the product and the service. But yes, he does. Maybe he needs a beer. a couple of beers, right? A hangover. But what I'm trying to focus you away from is that the product and the service are very important, but not enough. Not enough for you to create value such that a startup can scale and grow big. For that, you need to focus on the business model that comes with it. The product and the service enable a scalable and growable business model. Okay? And that's the real element. As investors, you are investing in a business model. When it comes to the opportunity, it's defined by the business model. And the business model is the creation of value. Please. Capability to innovate, in this sense of the word, is the startup's ability to create value should not be limited by their capabilities to do only products or service, but they have to have the capability to innovate the business model itself. You mean the capability to innovate?
Yeah.
Okay. So typically as an investor, so I'm going to take the approach of an investor. Okay. If I'm looking at it as as a team, and do I see that they have an innovation? Yes, they definitely need to have that. But that doesn't limit their capabilities to technical innovation. Okay. That could be included, sure. But are they able to innovate, for example, a new way of bringing the product to the market? So can they find new space that say, instead of bringing it there, let me give you an actual illustration. If I have a health-related company, like in digital health, am I going to try to bring that to the traditional players like hospitals or clinics, or am I going to try to sell this to Apple and tell Apple, hey, you already have health trackers. I have a solution that's going to blow your customers out of the water. Does that help?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Outside in perspective.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And that's what goes back to what we were talking about A teams. They need to demonstrate their ability to do this. That does not mean that you have all the answers. It means you're able to go out there in the field, talk to customers, and understand enough to make a very educated guess. Because that's the best you can do. Nobody has the answers in advance. Trust me, investors would love to, but we don't. Got it. Okay, very good. Okay, so when we're talking about business models, and again, beyond the product, is how do you bring it to market? When the company, how do you in other words, I'm trying to answer the question, how do you disrupt the market? How do you really radically change a market? When you look at the entire value chain and you find a way to do something better, cheaper, faster, whatever it is, but that way of doing it better can scale dramatically. Instagram is an example of that. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They didn't have the cure for cancer. They were not, let's say, some radical technology. But what they did is something very, very lovable, but that everybody just loved, right? They had 50 million users in Android within a few days. I mean, they started in iOS, and they captured that market very quickly as well. So something about their product improved the photography and the filters and all that, and people loved it. So even if you delight your customer just a little bit, but you can scale that massively, then you're ready to disrupt an industry. That brings me to how do you then have tools and practices to measure this, to go out there and get evidence. And this is a stupid question, but I want to make a point with it. Would you rather know in advance if there is some possibility that this startup can make it? The answer is, of course, yes. You would like to know. So how do you get there? Nobody has the answer in advance, but you want to have as much information in advance as possible that gives you reassurance, whether it will or it will not do it. Both answers are good. Because if you know in advance that this is not going to go, this is not going to fly, you can save yourself a lot of money, time, and effort. Okay? So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to skip a few slides because we're almost out of time. We are out of time. So what I want to get to is give you the story of the business models. Now, if you look at this statistic quickly, the companies that made it to the largest 500 in the world, more than half of them were startups. I mean, they were less than 25 years old. And these were not companies that they invented the cure for cancer or the perpetual machine or whatever. They were business model innovators. Does anybody recognize this? Amazon Fire? It was a complete failure. That's different. But anything that Amazon puts out, it's going to get seen by 500 million people. 500 million registered users in Amazon. So it's a real threat. But they never saw it coming because Amazon used to be a book online company. Online books, right? And then they did merchandising. And then they started doing the Kindle. And then they got into the phone. So none of the phone manufacturing companies saw this coming because the business model was changing. When you think of Amazon, do you think of a bank? About 90% of financial startups, fintech, about 90% use Amazon Web Services as their backbone. Do you still think of Amazon as a bank? They're going to be. In fact, they filed the paperwork in the United States to become a bank. That's scary. Nobody saw that coming because they keep changing the business model. It's not about being a bank anymore or selling products online anymore. It's about what can we do with the resources we have differently. They continuously reinvent themselves. And that's why one of the reasons I love this company. So these companies you all know, and this is what they did. Uber, the largest taxi company in the world, they don't own a single car. They just signed a deal last year with NASA to do driverless drones as taxis. By year 2020, they're going to have their first prototype in California. I would not want to get into their first prototype. I'll wait until they develop the technology a little more. Facebook, Alibaba. Alibaba is about 10 times the size of Amazon. And they have no inventory. No inventory. The largest retailer in the world has no inventory. That's incredible to believe. And then Airbnb. They have the most number of rooms available in the world. No other hotel chain can beat them. And they are the most valuable hotel company in the world. They're bigger than the Hilton. Look at that. I'm staying at the Hilton now, and it's not as big as Airbnb. So, and they did not invent hotel rooms. They just did something very, very differently. The business model changed. So that's what we're talking about with value creation. Let me talk a little bit about business models because this is where I want to end. So give me about 5 more minutes of your time. I know that we're a little bit over, so I'll get you done in about 5 minutes or so. But this is where I want to hammer the point in, and these are the tools. What is a business model? Most people confuse it with how you make money. That's the first answer you get. What's the business model? Is how you make money. How you make money is the revenue model. And it's a very, very important part. It's the part we all love about business models. But it's not the business model. Notice how we define business models here. It centers completely around value creation. Because trust me, without creating value for someone, you won't get them to pay. And you won't have any customers. There are 2 things that no company can survive without. Customers and cash. Can't survive without one or the other. You can do it for a little bit. You can throw a lot of customers and maybe get financing, but that's not going to last forever. Or you can throw a lot of financing but no customers. That's not going to last forever. So you need both. And the way to get there is by creating value for someone that's willing to pay for it. That is how you tie it to the money making. But value creation is what defines business models. How do you take it? You look at the most essential elements of business models and what relationships exist between them. Okay? And in that respect, you're prepared to look at new ways of doing it, new ways of creating value. The process of doing that, and this is where you actually as an investor want to understand startups, is show me how you're creating value for customers. It's an iterative process. It's not one time. It's a continuous, iterative process that builds on making hypotheses or educated guesses, going out to customers and either validating them or invalidating them. That process doesn't guarantee that you'll be successful, but it's definitely going to do two things. It's going to lower the cost and the frequency of failure. And that's already a win, because you will have enough information to understand whether you have a fighting chance or not. Doesn't guarantee you'll be successful, but at least you'll lower the cost of frequency. It's a 4-step process. You know the tool, you know the business model canvas tool. This is a tool. This is not the business model. And you use the tool to go out to the market and validate or invalidate. I'm waiting for the translation. He told me 15% delay. Okay. The first step is to use the tool is you make guesses about what value you create for your customers, who your customers are, how you're going to get to your customers, how are you going to maintain relationships with your customer, then how you're going to monetize the opportunity. That's everyone's favorite part. But notice that it doesn't work unless the central part of the business model works, value creation. And then the rest of the stuff is what you need to get this happening. So what resources, what activities will you be doing with those resources? What partners are going to help you create this value? And what are the most essential cost structures needed in order for this to happen? You make guesses about this. Even if you are an expert in your industry, the best you can do is make a guess. Because the second step is you go out and talk to customers, potential customers, intermediaries, users. And the process is this. 99% of startups spend their time in searching for a business model. They spend sometimes months, sometimes years, iterating the business model. Once they find it, then they can go into execution mode. And this is the difference between search and execute, is where startups die. Because they start executing too early. And they spend a lot of money trying to execute a business model that is not yet validated. So you need to validate the business model before you start executing. Not ask, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, do you like my product? That's not validation. Third step is gain insights from your customers. And what you're out there to do is patting yourself in the back. Like, yeah, good job. You want to understand is, what does my product do for you? What is the problem you are facing? How can we help you fix it? Tell me about your frustrations. What is the experience that leads up to the problem that you face, and what happens afterwards, so that you don't just focus on when they have the problem, but what leads up to it and what happens after, so you have greater opportunity to fit into that entire business model. Those are the insights that you're looking for. And with those insights, you go back to the table and you validate your guesses and invalidate other guesses, and you might have new ones, new insights. And you keep doing this process repeatedly, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. And eventually, at some point, things are going to start falling into place. They're going to start being aligned. They're going to start being linked. to the point that, yeah, I'm starting to get the feeling that we have a working, repeatable business model. And then you're ready to execute. But that's the difference between failed startups and those that go on to execute. It makes a big difference. I won't go in there. I'll stop the workshop here. But the next set of slides, what they talk about is PwC did a study of the largest 250 companies in the world. And in terms of innovation, those who were considered innovative companies and those who were not considered innovative companies. And they showed that those that were considered innovative companies performed 3 times better in terms of revenue than those that were not. And a big part of that, I'll show it to you. Here it is. 3 times more. And a big part of that, this is revenues, by the way. The most innovative companies versus the least innovative companies. And this is very old industrial manufacturing companies. Old-fashioned, old school. And a big element of that was business model innovation. That were the defining piece between the two. So, all in all, what I want to tell you is that these are tools that are going to help you understand what the development of your startups are. If everyone in your team, in your investment team, can align with the startup entrepreneurs around what value you are creating, who the customers are, how we're going to best serve them. And that has been validated by going to the field and talking to customers. Then you start to work together towards the growth of a real startup that can create a lot of disruption and growth. That's all I have for you today. I want to give you a chance to ask me some questions. Sorry I had to go a little bit slow, but I wanted to give the translator a bit more of a chance to speak. Any questions or comments?
What other instruments do you use when you work with startups? Do you invest except business model comes?
Very good point, and a very good question, and let me expand that a little bit. We use this tool when we have very early stage startups. Those that are a little bit more developed and a little bit more mature, we co-define strategic developmental milestones. So for example, we have a portfolio company called Mitofier, and they're in EdTech, education technology, and they were way past this because they went through an accelerator. So they got all this through the accelerator. So it was very easy for us to talk the same language. We didn't have to go through this. So what we started focusing on then was on the number of active users per month, for example, because it's an app and it's used in the classrooms. The number of new schools. We then went on to get a channel deal with Scholastic, one of the largest publishers in the world. And so that's still a bit slow, but we are also going to enact analytical measures like you would have, say, with Google. Similar, but not exactly, but similar to Google Analytics. So it moves more towards the KPIs that are specific to the startup itself. Because this doesn't last forever, right? They get to a point where, yeah, we know our business model, we know our customers, we now need to move to scale the opportunity, right? I'll give you another example. A second EdTech company in our portfolio has been operating for about 2 years. And it took them up until last month to really understand who their customers were. Because they went around with one school, one startup in EdTech, another startup in EdTech, and they thought that was their customer base. But they ran into a publisher, and they thought, oh wow, with one publisher, we can get hundreds of customers, thousands of customers. And they actually got asked or invited by a venture capital fund purely focused on educational technology. And it's a pretty large one. It's Reach Capital, about $150 million in just for EdTech. and they wanted them to do all their products. So they found out that with one venture capital fund and with one channel like a publisher, they didn't need to go one by one anymore. So long story, in 2 years, it took them that long to find their sweet spot, who are our real customers. And once you find that, the way that you serve those customers is very different. The way that you get to publishers is very different than going to specific one-by-one startups, if that was your customer base. So this is why it's very important that the focus early on is on value creation and customer segments. That defines the relationship between those two, defines the rest of the business model. It's very worthwhile spending more time on figuring that out than anything else in the business model, because that defines the rest. It even defines how you monetize the opportunity. Because in the second case I gave you, they were pricing they sell a product as a certificate, a pedagogical quality certificate. And they were going out to charge startups something like €1,000, where they get a publisher, you can't charge that much. If you're going to get 100 deals in a single shot, your price has to come down. So they have or you can do a subscription-based model. So again, the relationship between customer segments and value defines the rest of the business model. So long answer, but it just depends on the stage of the company. The more mature they are, the more that we move towards specific milestones, commonly agreed milestones that are specific to their segment or particular KPIs that we develop together. We don't develop them in isolation. We agree to them together.
What do you think about club or collective investments as opposed to sole angel investment?
Collective investments in what respect?
Collective investments or club investments where people collect their monies.
Sure. Do you want me to give you the answer from the investor point of view or from the startup point of view? From the investment point of view, okay. As an angel investor, I like to share risk with other investors, especially if I know them, because then I value their opinion, and then it's also, sharing risk. I never take a full round as an angel investor, and we rarely take a full round as a venture capital fund. We like to share risk. So it also, that's number one. Number two is that we also like to get to know the other investors because it's mutually beneficial, but also we would have to work with them eventually to open doors, because if one investor is opening doors for everyone else and all other investors are just enjoying it, that's not very fair. So we want to be able to work together with other investors and have a similar effort, or at least an effort that is proportionate to our investment. So if I put down 60% of a round and another investor is putting in 1%, then I don't expect that 1% person to put as much effort as me. And you get my point. Yeah, but the main question is sharing risk and trust among investors. I like that. I like to work with syndicates. Yeah.
What do you think about in market adoption in terms of this perspective? Because strong hierarchical companies are definitely fading away. So we're looking for like a spider's web connections between investors, customers, people, entrepreneurs, etc. Flat network of people and community ecosystem. And the world goes that way for sure. What do you think about the investment in that perspective when you do collective investment, club investment? In that particular area, is it better as opposed to classical investments when you do it on your own?
Well, I don't know if I would classify it as better or worse. I think it's another option. I just think that it's again, being part of a community, the ability for you to open doors for your investment, the ability to make introductions grows. And I'll give you a specific illustration. In Finland, there's this network of angel investors, and that's all it is. It's just individual investors that can choose to do it on their own, or small groups, or larger groups. It's self-organized, and it's one of the best, it's considered one of the most prominent angel networks in Europe. And I love working with that, with some groups more than others, because some groups are chaotic. And so the nice thing about it is that you can choose who you work with. And eventually you get to know the players and who you want to work with and so on. Yes. But I like those. I like the networks, again, because it just gives you a lot more perspective. And it's a lot easier to find experts. If you don't know a particular investment area, but you like it, you can always get somebody else to have a look. Yeah, exactly. And also knowledge risk as well. So, yeah. Please.
How do you understand that here is an 18?
How do you understand? Oh, that is the hardest question. So the question was, how do you pick an A team? That is very, very difficult question. The answer is you have to get to know the people as best as you can. In our venture capital fund, we have had, I guess, the luck and privilege that all of our investments we have made are entrepreneurs that we have known for a long time. Fire, that I have mentioned already, went through an accelerator where I'm a coach. I spent 16 weeks with Fire before we even considered investing in them. That's a long time, because most investors have 4 or 5 meetings, maybe, across a couple of months. And based on that, they have to make an investment decision. And in our case, we've had that case where we went through an accelerator program with at least 3 of our investment companies, and the other 3 were entrepreneurs that we knew from previous startups, because we're plugged in with the ecosystem really well. So we have been lucky that we haven't had the chance to invest in someone totally new to us yet. But again, that's also another reason why we try to plug ourselves very, very intimately in the ecosystem, so that we know the players that we want to invest in. Because the answer is, you can't pick an A team based on 4 to 5 times. I mean, it might give you that impression, but this is an opinion. I think it takes longer than that to really pick a team that's an A team. It's very hard. Yeah. Every investor would like to know that. More questions? Thank you very much, guys. I wish you the best luck with this course, and let me know if you have questions. My contact details I'll leave behind for you. Happy to help. If you have questions, shoot me an email. Thank you. Thank you, guys.